Hi, today I'm going to cover using rofi as an application launcher and Windows switcher instead of dmenu with xmonad. So what I'll do now is open rofi and show you what it looks like. I'll press the keyboard shortcut, and in this menu you can see we've got a combination menu showing the windows open on the system and the applications on those workspaces, and then a list of applications with nice colourful icons so that you can actually see at a glance what the application is. And I can switch to a one of these windows by either typing the application name or by the window number. So if I want to switch to Emacs, I could either type Emacs or press the number 2. So if I type Emacs, press return, it switches to Emacs. Here I can see I've got Firefox open on the third screen. Just type 3 and I'll switch back to Firefox. So the reason you might want to use rofi as an alternative to dmenu is for a couple of reasons. One reason is when you use dmenu, what it's going to do is show you all of the binaries on the system. So basically when you search for something, it's going to show you the desktop applications as well as sort of binaries. So for instance, if you launch dmenu and you start typing Firefox, it will also list a fire, which sometimes is installed by default on some systems as a sort of screensaver sort of fire effect. Basically what happened a lot, I found, was I'd go to launch Firefox and launch a fire in the background as a sort of screensaver, and my CPU was going through the roof and couldn't figure out what it was. So I run a psox to see what processes were being used. So rofi will just show you actual desktop applications. So if I open rofi, you can see these are all desktop applications and not sort of binary sort of programs that you'd launch in the terminal. So that's one advantage, is that you don't accidentally try and launch a program that you don't want to, and you don't have a massive list of programs to go through. You just have the list of desktop applications. The second issue with rofi, not with dmenu, is especially with xmonad, is when you run it, by default it's going to be up at the top of the screen, and dmenu will obscure your entire xmobile status bar, so all your workspaces, name of the window, the time, and any icons or anything you've got. So when you run dmenu, this entire line disappears, whereas with rofi it will actually by default it's going to open in the center of the screen, which is a bit nicer than a thin little strip up the top, I think. But there were a couple of things you need to do to get rofi working with xmonad, and obviously first you need to install the rofi package on your system, and secondly, in your xmonad config, there is a library that you need to install, which is the EwmhDesktops, and this is required so that when you run rofi, you can see here it's generating a list of all the workspaces that have currently got a application open on them. And to be able to do that, I think it needs this EwmhDesktops library. And what you need to do, if I scroll down to the main config, what you need to do is main equals do xmonad $EWMH, and then the name of your desktop config. And once you've done that, basically rofi will then be able to pick up which workspaces have got windows on them, and obviously the next step is to actually create a keyboard shortcut for rofi, and then I'll move on to the rofi configuration file, because it has a a new format and file extension. So to launch Rofi, what we're going to do is launch it in a combi mode that will show the application launcher and window switcher in one window. Otherwise, what you have to do is use a keyboard shortcut, which I think is something like Control Tab, to tab between two different windows. So it's just easier having them combined into one, so you can switch windows and launch applications really quickly. So what we do is we use an easy config keyboard setup. I've defined the key as the mod key and P, which replaces the key binding for D menu, and then spawn rofi dash show combi dash modi combi. And then after you've done that, what you need to do is actually set up the configuration file for Rofi. And if you have a look on the Arch wiki, there is a section down here basically showing you how to dump the configuration file for Rofi. And if I just come across and copy that, so the name would be config.rasi. If I open that up, basically this is the default configuration file, and you can override bits of it by putting them in your config file. So you've got basically settings for the modi, which is the settings that come up in the window. So in this window, we can see we've got two modes. We've got the window switcher mode and the drun application launcher. So in the modi, what you have is the window, the drun, and the combi mode. And then basically also what you do is have the show icons true, and that's how you get the icons working. So basically, once you've actually exported the config as the config.rasi file, you would put it in your config rofi directory. So if I come across the file path would be .config rofi config.rasi, and you don't need to copy the entire default settings into your config file, only the settings that you actually want to override. So for instance here I'm setting the window to drun, window drun and combi mode, so that basically when I launch this I have the window switcher, the application launcher in the combi combined into one window. And then you can set the theme, and there are a lot of default themes built into Rofi, and I'll switch back across to the wiki in a second to show you how to set those and other options that you can set. You can also set the font and the terminal, showing icons, and then what you also need to do is set the combi mode. And basically what this is doing is saying in the combination window which modis do you want to run, which modes, because you can also have a SSH mode that will basically launch a terminal and SSH into another machine. So what I'll do is I'll show you how you can set that up if you want to, but if you come across to the main site here, you see on Rofi on GitHub there's a link to the wiki, and on the wiki there is a load of information about configuring Rofi and setting it up. And you see down here that there's user scripts. You come across here, there are scripts for lots of different things like bookmarks, calculators, working with MPD and the music player daemon. There are also scripts that you can use to log into sites and stuff, so you can actually fill in passwords. I think it's rofi pass, handles a simple password store. So there's a lot of additional scripts that you can install for rofi that sort of extend its functionality. But if I come across to my config and open up the rofi config file, basically what I can do here is I can change this and add SSH and add SSH here. What this will do is this will show oops, I think I've accidentally typed too many S's. And what this will do is it will allow you to SSH into another machine by typing the name of the host in rofi. So if I then tangle this file, which will write it out to disk, now when I open rofi, we've still got the combination window, but if I type the name of the host and press return, you can see it's opened a new terminal window and SSH'd into another machine. And basically the way that it does that is in your .ssh configuration folder, you have a config file, and in that file you define the host name of the machine you're going to connect to, an IP address and stuff, and rofi can then use that information so that when you type the host name of the machine, it will then automatically connect using the configuration options that you've set for that host in your shush slash config file. And basically the reason why it's logging in for me without a prompt or anything is because I've got SSH keys set up so that you create SSH keys and you basically copy the sort of public key across to the remote machine and set it up so that it doesn't use a password, it just uses SSH keys, so that when you do that, it will just type in shush and then the name of the shush host it then logs in. So basically that's what rofi is doing, is the equivalent. It's just running the same command, and that's how it can SSH into the remote machine. There's one thing I have noticed about the application switcher. What I've got set up in xmonad is the ability to use DWM style window tagging, so that I can tag a window across multiple workspaces. So I can tag this Firefox window so it appears on the fifth workspace. So you can see here I'm switching workspaces. This is the third workspace and this is the fifth workspace. If I launch rofi, you'll see that Firefox is listed on the fifth window, not on the third window. So what happens is we've got one instance of Firefox that's displayed on two workspaces, and this was the original workspace we launched Firefox on, and we copied it to this fifth workspace. So what it seems like rofi does is it picks up the last workspace the window is tagged on. So if I mark this as number 6 and then I switch to another workspace, you'll now see that Firefox is listed as the 6th window it's on. So if I, like, for instance, I can type, if I type 3 here, it's not actually giving me the window to switch to. It's not giving me the options to switch to workspaces 3 and 5, which Firefox is also tagged on. It just gives the last workspace that it was tagged on. So if I come across and I can kill all the other copies of Firefox running on different workspaces, and then you can see Firefox is now listed on the third window, third workspace. So that's one sort of thing that's come up. It's not really an issue. It's just a behaviour that it's got that interacts with the way I've got xmonad set up to tag a window across multiple workspaces. So I thought I'd mention it if anyone's doing the same sort of thing and they come across that issue. So that's a couple of reasons you might want to use rofi as a application launcher instead of dmenu, because as I said, a couple of the issues were one, dmenu is going to show you all the binary applications, not just the desktop application, so you can sometimes launch the wrong program, and also you'll have a massive list to narrow down instead of just a list of actual desktop applications. And the second issue is that by default dmenu is going to come up at the top of the screen and obscure your xmobile. Another thing with dmenu is it's a suckless tool, so if you install the dmenu as a package, I don't think it actually has a configuration file that you can change the settings in, because the suckless tools, basically you have to compile them yourself and set the options in the source code, like to change the font or the color or anything. So I think to actually change the look and feel of dmenu, you'd actually have to edit the source code and compile it yourself to make those changes, versus just setting them in a config with rofi. The other thing I was looking at is there is a way with xmonad to sort of create a prompt which you could use as an alternative to dmenu, and I had to look at that, and there's a the xmobile prompt, xmonad. It has these different sort of prompts, and one of them I did have a look at was it's got a sort of shell prompt, which is a bit like a dmenu thing, but I had a look at the xmonad prompt xmonad, and basically what you do is import these two libraries into xmonad. So if I come across to my xmonad config and then add those two, and what you need to do is actually set a key binding. So I'm using the easy sort of config format, so I'll just have to change this. But once you have this set up, it sort of launches a little prompt at the bottom of the screen where you can switch workspaces and stuff. See if I can get this working. Something like let's do shift meta and 0, so it doesn't conflict with anything. I think that should be it. Tangled file. The only thing is, if I restart xmonad, is it going to cut out the screen recording? That might happen. So let me try and see what happens. Okay, let me see if that's still going on. Okay, now we try there you can see we've got this like little prompt down here that comes up, and what you can do is you can actually see like you've got view 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and those are like switching to a different workspace. So if I type view 1, it will switch to view 1. So if I press the keyboard shortcut I defined, which was shift, the mod key and O, you can see we get this little prompt, and you've got various options like next layout. So I could type next layout, and it will toggle through the layout. I think, is it previous layout? I thought it had a thing that said yeah, you've got default layout. I don't know if you've got an option to sort of cycle through to the previous layout. It just seems to have next layout or default layout. So I can do default layout, and it switches to that. So that's a sort of like little built-in xmonad prompt that you can set up, and you have to sort of press escape to sort of toggle out of it. And once you actually have this sort of come up, it's sort of like in the foreground, and you have to exit out before you can do anything else. That's the sort of the xmonad prompt, and there's basically lots of other sort of prompts that you can install, and there is one for switching layouts, but unfortunately it only switches to the layouts that are currently in use. Doesn't kind of allow you to cycle through a list of all your different layouts that you might have got set up, and I couldn't see offhand easily a way to sort of extend this without sort of getting in deep. So you have like the xmonad prompt, which is say will allow you to kind of switch views, like view 6, is it like to, you have to tab through. So the thing is, when you're typing this, you can't type view 6, you've got to type view and then double quotes for it to basically execute. So I think the little xmonad prompt, although it's nice, isn't as usable a window switcher as having rofi. So again, with rofi, basically I can either switch by typing the application's name or the number of the workspace it's on. So I can type 3, and it will switch to the third thing. There is also an option with rofi to actually have it run in a mode called run, where it's kind of like will launch like binary applications you've got installed, like a terminal application, whether it's something like Newsboat or WeChat, or any other sort of Encurses application or something like that. But what I found was I just couldn't get it to work. It would launch the program, but it wouldn't come to the foreground in a terminal. It would be launched in the background, and you'd have to sort of, if you run psox or pgrep, you could see the program had been launched and is running, but it wasn't in the foreground. It, for some reason, whether it's the ZSH shell or the terminal I'm using, it wouldn't open the application in a terminal window. So you then manually had to kill it using pkill or something like that. So rofi is got a lot of different features. It's probably the best sort of window switching manager I've come across, sort of using xmonad in a short space of time, as opposed to like the built-in xmonad prompt, and dmenu doesn't actually have the the ability to sort of show you the applications on different workspaces and let you switch to them. So it's a good window switcher and an application launcher, and the advantage of using it as an application launcher over dmenu is that it's only going to show desktop applications that have got a .desktop file, a .desktop config file, which is usually the case when you install a desktop application on Linux or Unix. Again, it's got the SSH launcher, if that's something you want to do, so you can just basically launch rofi, type in the host name, and you can see there it's just connected. So you also have the SSH launcher, and again that's basically using the SSH config file and the host names in there, and I think there's actually a setting in the sort of rofi config that sets the host name or something. Yeah, so see this parse known host true. Basically, I think that's what it's using to determine the shush host names. It's parsing the shush config file. You can also add additional scripts. You can load your own scripts with rofi, and you can either launch rofi in like a combined mode, or as a window that has different modes that you can kind of cycle through with, like I think it's control tab. So you have to sort of control tab through, like an application launcher window, and then control tab through to the window switcher. So it's probably easy to use the combined mode. And again, things you need to set up on xmonad to get this working are having the EwmhDesktops library, the xmonad hooks EwmhDesktops library installed, and in your main config section it's sort of launched like this: xmonad $EWMH, and then the desktop config, and then finally actually define a keyboard shortcut for it. And basically I'm overriding the default D menu keyboard shortcut with meta p, and then we spawn rofi show combi, and that shows the combined mode, and then modi combi. You can also just change this to -d run, and then that would show a window with the modes on different windows you have to cycle through. So like you'd launch it and it would show a window switcher mode in the window, and then you'd have to cycle through the window to get to the application launcher, which again is a bit slow. And the other thing is basically setting up the actual dot files, and the config.rasi file is the new format, and you can basically just override the settings that you want that are the default settings. And basically I was just using window drun, so Windows the window switcher, drun is the application launcher. If you put -run there after that, that will give you the option to launch binaries, and so that will allow you to launch programs like Newsboat or WeChat or something, but I haven't managed to get that working. And then again, set the show icons true, the combi mode. You don't put combi in this because otherwise it'll be trying to add itself, so you just have the windows that you're going to want to show in the combined window there. And so that's how you set up the config file. and this is the xmonad prompt again, and this was how you can add the xmonad prompt like that, and that was the key binding. Which if I just go back into that's how we set the prompt in the easy config format to shift mod key and O, which then launches the xmonad prompt, and then kind of gives you options to switch layouts, perhaps screens. I haven't really looked at any of the others apart from changing view and changing the layout, but I don't know. I don't think it's as a good tool to use as a window switcher. Coming up like that and having to type view like that to go through stuff, you don't know what's on them, versus using rofi. You've got the list of the workspaces have got a running window on it, and you can switch to them either by typing the application name or the number of the workspace. And also, if you have icons, it's actually really nice. You can actually see here the current workspace is highlighted blue, and it's Emacs, and whereas the next one up is Firefox, and it's just a lot easier to identify with the icons, I find. And you can just press 3 and then switch. So using rofi with xmonad works really well. You just need to set up the EwmhDesktop, copy the config file, and make the changes that you want. And again, that's the main site, rofi, GitHub. And if you come across, if I can scroll fast enough, come across to the wiki. It has a whole section here with the sort of user scripts. So there's loads of different user scripts here that you can extend rofi with. So like, for instance, you can actually Google from within rofi, which I think is something a bit like Alfred on the Mac used to have. So that's kind of emulating some of that stuff. You've got stuff for interacting with Spotify or VirtualBox, and yeah, there's another one here is the rofi pass, which basically I think allows you to sort of log into sites and stuff, but I haven't tried that out. And there's a good section on the Arch wiki about rofi, which will basically explain the sort of different modis that you can run. So like, you can run rofi from the command line and actually test out the options like that. But this would be the configuration file for those options that you're going to pass on the command line. And again, you can dump the rofi config file by rofi dump config like that, and you can dump it straight into the correct directory. But you've got to make sure the rofi directory exists first of all, obviously. And again, the config file looks like that, and you can basically come through and you could copy the entire thing into your config rofi file, or just the options you're going to override. But if you're going to copy this in, basically you need to uncomment the different things in 2 sections, there and at the end, and then sort of save it. So that's the sort of rofi configuration file, sort of new format. And if I just bring up rofi for one last time, this is it using the solarized theme. I didn't have to do anything, just set the theme, set the configuration for the icons. There's also actually, if I come across to the config one last time, there's a if you search for icons, you can see show icons true, and I have the font set here, but you can also set the icon theme specifically. So if you've got another icon theme that you want to use, you can uncomment this section and then put in the name of the icon theme that you're going to use that's installed on your system. So have a look through the config file at the different options you can set. But I think as a sort of application launcher, it works really nicely and has got a bit more eye candy than D menu, which can look a bit, simple with small white font, whereas it's a bit more easy on the eye. So that's how you can set up rofi with icons, and what you need to do to get it working with xmonad, so that you can switch windows as well as launch applications.